Kia ora and welcome to Wellywood Wargaming. I've got a special guest here today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jimmy with Miniature Game Montage.
Awesome, Jimmy. And Jimmy's coming all the way from Texas, and I'm in New Zealand, and somehow the miracle of technology has brought us together through different means. But we've been chatting a little bit prior to this, and we just thought it would be good to get together and discuss the hobby and what makes us tick, I suppose. So yeah, I've got a few questions for you. I mean, obviously the main one is, how long have you been into Necromunda specifically, and how did you get into it originally?
Yeah, so Necromunda specifically, probably 2020. Was that in the middle of the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I think
somewhere around in there. So I remember watching the intro video or Learn to Play. I think Becca Scott might have been the one that was kind of doing the demo. It was like a Warhammer official video. I thought, man, that looks really, really cool. Like from the lighting looked cool, and they had the dark uprising terrain and everything was set up. It just looked incredible. And I started to read into it and look at kind of the lore and what Necromunda was all about and the setting and everything else. And I just thought, oh man, this is really cool. And then behind that, there was just this huge narrative, and you could kind of do what Games Workshop wanted you to do in the past and kind of forge your own path. Make your own stories and do your own things. And it's in the middle of COVID and pandemic, and like my son, we're trying to keep him like off of screens and stuff like that. Don't, play on your tablet and all that stuff all day. We want you to do something else. And kind of playing these games and getting to know how things kind of work was kind of our just thing, and we kind of just started, and now it's turned into what it has today, 2.5 years later. So
awesome.
pretty cool.
Awesome. So you're not an old school veteran. You weren't playing it back in the 90s or anything at all, or?
No, unfortunately, I did not get to play the old Necromunda, which I wish I would have. I mean, I've heard lots of good stories from people from the old days. I've seen the old cardboard terrain and things like that.
I still love all that.
Yeah, I've got some old white dwarfs from when I was like maybe 10 years old, and they're down in the garage, and they've got Necromunda pamphlets and stuff like that in there. So I've been involved in the hobby for some time. But I was kind of a closet hobbyist, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the miniatures and the painting and things like that, even as a young adult. But it wasn't, I guess, socially acceptable in my circle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I found myself like when people would come over, I was like, hiding my stuff because I felt like I would be judged or something. They wouldn't understand, or they wouldn't get it. So now that I'm older, I've really started to care less, and
exactly.
It's incredible. I feel like my hobby journey has almost just started in the last 5 years, even though I've been kind of involved in the hobby for much longer.
So what sort of systems were you playing before Necromunda then? Was it 40k mainly and stuff, or?
No, so I originally got introduced into, I kind of followed the Warhammer universe from afar. I really like the fantasy aspect, and when I decided to make my first big purchase, like a box set, if you will, it was it 8th edition of Fantasy that got killed?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I think it was. I think I purchased the 8th edition box set. It was Ratkin or not Ratkin. That's Mantic's
Skaven,
Skaven and some of the faction. But right after that, the End Times released, and the entire game just kind of went to something that I just kind of lost a connection with.
Yeah, same.
So I kind of got into another game called Flames of War, which was World War II based. And the local group I was with, there was a lot of people there kind of playing historical games. So that kind of helped me get into the miniature gaming aspect of things. And then from there, it's just snowballed. I found myself, getting into 40K, and then just whatever else I could get my hands on, bolt action.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic.
Slippery slope. Yeah. So what made you decide to, want to create a YouTube channel for this stuff?
So that's interesting. I mean, the first and foremost point was bonding with my son, and having something to do during COVID, and just having some time to spend with each other. And throughout making these videos, I kept thinking, I travel a lot for work, and I kept thinking, if anything ever happens to me, for whatever reason, he'll be able to look back on like these videos for forever,
Well,
know,
you've kind of immortalized yourself in a way, it's an
right.
interesting thing, isn't it? Like that's kind of what
Yeah.
it is. And it's like any recording anything really. It's
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool.
So first and foremost, it was kind of that, just having that, connection with him, and him being able to look back on like good times that we had, no matter what happens, or
Mm.
what's further down the road. But in addition, I talked about being a closet hobbyist, and because of that, I wanted to try to give something back. Like, there's so many people out there that are trying to help build and develop and push the hobby forward. And I thought, I've just kind of been locked behind a door for so long, I can come out publicly and try to get people to
Come
come and
out
play
of the
these games
closet.
too. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of my second point of doing it, was just to try to give something back to the hobby. So
Oh, awesome. And how old's your son? You have a couple, right? Or
yeah, well, I've got a son and two daughters. So my son will soon be 9. But the kid
same age as my
is
son.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the kid's absolutely brilliant. He was reading by the time he was 3 years old. He was doing full on math by the time he was 4 or 5.
Very
And
similar to mine.
yeah, I mean, kid is just fantastically smart. He's got a mind like a steel trap. And he doesn't always get the moves, but I at least talk to him about it and say, hey, look, are you sure you want to do this? And if he says yes, then that's what we do. So sometimes you might see some quirky stuff come around, but ultimately I want him to be in control of what he's doing. So
That's awesome that you get him involved on the YouTube battle reports and stuff. I think the first time I noticed that it wasn't a man doing the dice rolls. I just saw these small hands rolling dice, and I'm like, either those are Jimmy's small hands, or
yeah,
I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. That's really cool. I try and get my son involved in it as well, but I don't want to force it. Like you were saying, I don't want to force it, because he'll be interested if he's interested. Hopefully he does, but I'm not really bothered if he doesn't. It's one of those things. I can't force it.
Yeah, so I was really big into sports growing up. I played every sport and on demand. And at the time of us growing up, I'm 40, of course, but we were outside a lot, and we didn't have all the tablets and everything that keeps these kids indoors nowadays. So my son is just not like that. And no matter how much I want to push him to, play football or play baseball or come outside and shoot basketball or whatever, that's just not his thing. So I've learned very similar to what you just said. I'm not going to push him into that. I'm going to let him kind of make his own decisions and figure out what he likes. And so far he's been enjoying rolling some dice and playing some games. So it's been
awesome.
good.
Yeah. So how did you think you'd get to? I mean, what, you're nearly 10,000 subscribers now or something?
Almost.
Right?
Yeah, I think less than 500 to go.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, you must be pretty proud of that, considering it's such a small niche of stuff that you do.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at, a lot of the bigger channels, obviously, and my goal obviously isn't to get big and do other things. I have a full-time job, and YouTube is purely part-time for me. I look at a lot of the larger channels out there and kind of what they do and what they offer, and a lot of them are artistic, and they really just add a lot of value to the hobby, either by introducing something just like you've never seen before with a painting technique or something else. I find myself, kind of, I'm blown away that I have the subscription base that I have. Being at 10,000 subscribers, or about to be, is an incredible feat, and I'm just extremely grateful to have it, because I honestly just feel like the average Joe of a gamer. I'm not a competitive gamer. I don't publish competitive battle reports, which I know are super popular. I'm not painting fantastic miniatures or anything like that, but somehow there's that amount of people have kind of gravitated towards what I've done, and it's incredible.
Well, I mean, you're a huge influence on me as well. I've obviously watched you since before I started doing this. This is completely new to me. I've only been doing the whole YouTube thing for a couple of months now. It's going pretty well, but you're a huge influence on me, and definitely one of the reasons why I started doing it. So
that's what it's all about. Every time I read a comment like that, it really puts it in perspective for me, because I think about it as if I got one more person to pick up Necromunda or pick up Kill Team or whatever game that they enjoy playing, and they found some friends because of it, or they're playing it with a family member, maybe their kid, their son or their daughter, whatever it may be, that makes it all worth it for me. So at the end of the day, it's not about growing my subscription base. I rarely look at analytics. I rarely kind of dig into what makes my channel tick. I just kind of share what I enjoy doing, and
Well, I think
that's it.
that's what's good about your stuff, obviously, is it's quite genuine. There's nothing forced. It feels quite like you're just doing it because you enjoy it. You can kind of tell.
Right.
I think that's the same with me to a certain degree as well. I'm not really doing it for myself. It's just because people want that, it seems. So yeah, it's just nice and natural and organic, I suppose, that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So have you got much of a sort of group of friends and stuff there as well, or do you mainly just play with your kids and stuff? Or
yeah, unfortunately, Necromunda, where I am, I don't feel like has that pull. And I've reached out to our Facebook group, and locally, I've tried to partner with a local store here to try to do something and get some more involvement, I guess. And I just really haven't seen the big pull from it that I had hoped. A lot of pull for 40K and games like that, obviously, and not so much for Necromunda, but it hasn't deterred my I guess my ambition to try to get something locally. And if I can, I will certainly have them on the channel to play some games. But for right now, it's just kind of me and my son, and it's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, Texas is a huge place. I mean, I'm sure there are people there, but I guess it's such a huge place that people have to travel for miles just to get anywhere, right? So,
right. Yeah. Sometimes I get a little bit envious, looking in the UK and things like that about, how close people at least feel like they are together,
proximity,
gaming groups and things like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had that, this would be incredible.
Yeah, like I said, very lucky where I am in Wellington. I mean, Wellington's a tiny city. I mean, New Zealand's only got 5 million people, but Wellington, teeny city compared to where I'm from in London. But yeah, there's definitely a good scene here. I'd like to think that we've kind of helped contribute to that scene, obviously. But
absolutely,
even when I came here, it was I got really involved in the Blood Bowl scene when I came over here and was doing a lot of tournaments and stuff. And the scene, people were just really passionate here. And the thing I noticed, actually, like you were saying earlier about closet gaming, is that people in New Zealand are far more laid back and they don't really care about what people think so much. It's like no one cares about being cool or how you're being perceived. You kind of like, everybody's a bit of a nerd here, and that's kind of acceptable. But in London, I mean, I used to work in fashion and stuff, and I was so concerned about what people thought of me and how I looked and acted and stuff. It's really quite liberating to be somewhere that's not really the thing anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome. I now, when people come over and I've got a full Necromunda table set up upstairs, I just leave it as it is.
Yeah, good stuff.
Not even worried about it.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I think it's weird, isn't it? Like, I used to have that sort of anxiety as a teenager because I've been into the hobby since the 80s, right? I mean, since back when I was really small. And I used to have that sort of anxiety around what people thought and stuff if they found out I was a closet nerd. And yeah, I used to be kind of almost ashamed of it and stuff, which is such a terrible thing, because it was so valuable to me from a creativity and from a mental health aspect as well. Like I've said before, it actually did give me a form of escapism from the harsh realities that I had as a child as well, because our childhood wasn't great, so it was good to escape. My mind was in the 40K universe mainly, so it was quite good to have that. So I'm very grateful that I've had that, that's for sure.
Right. So let me ask you a quick question. What aspect of the hobby do you enjoy the most? Is it the gaming piece? Is it the painting? Is it
honestly,
the lore?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a bit of everything equally. I obviously do like the hobby and the painting side of things a lot, and I've done that for a very long time, but I've never tried to be a great painter or anything. I've just tried to sort of have my own style, and I think I've got that now. But it's not, I'm a very impatient person, and I can't sit down and just, if I did spend a lot longer on stuff, then I know that I'll be much better at it. But it's not really about that for me. It's more about the sort of artistic expression of it and just getting it done. It's a funny one. It's like writing a song or something, isn't it? When you paint something, I think it's some of it works out, some of it doesn't, but I quite like the way that happens, the sort of natural processes. But I do love the game, like Necromunda specifically, I think is just such a great rule set. I really enjoy the mechanics of it and the way the tactical elements sort of, it's not just purely tactical, you've still got that fluffy narrative side of it as well. It's just a really nicely balanced game. I think it's definitely not perfect, but it's
right,
getting there. And then the lore of it, I think my imagination is always elsewhere. I'm always thinking about the 40K universe, particularly reading a lot of novels and a lot of fluff generally. So got a pretty good knowledge of things, I suppose, over the years, although that sort of fluff has changed since the 80s, of course. A lot has changed since then, specifically in the Warhammer universe, of course. I was talking earlier about, you know, Warhammer Fantasy turning into Age of Sigmar, and how hopefully they'll be going back to the old world at some point. I'm not sure, but until then, I'm not that interested in it, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the narrative aspect of Necromunda is just absolutely incredible, and people play games for different reasons. I play games because I love just kind of visually, you know, just picturing. I remember when I was a kid and seeing a line of Bretonnian knights, and they were, you know, just in a white dwarf or something, and they were just, you know, thundering down on some goblins or something like that. And it was that picture, you know, in my mind. It was just like, even though I would never be able to paint like that, I bought the kits with the expectation that maybe I could. And Necromunda just really kind of checks that box for me, because, you know, when you're, you know, in hand-to-hand combat and you're up on a balcony or something, and you know, you pin the fighter or whatever happens, and you know, they've got to take an initiative check, or they're going to fall to the ground or something like that. The elements of that and the narrative that just comes around, it's just, it really just checks all the boxes for me as far as wargaming is concerned.
Yeah, I think the only thing, well, the main problem with Necromunda, I think, at the moment is the sort of accessibility. And I think a lot of people that are new to it right now, if you were to come into it right now, like we haven't, it would probably be a bit daunting, just the amount of stuff that you got to digest, because there's so many books. Like, I mean, that's the problem with a lot of Games Workshop stuff in general, is there's just too many books. And I get it, they're a business, right? They need to bring out these books and maximize sales and stuff, but I see so many posts on Facebook groups and stuff about, you know, where do I start? Which books do I need and stuff? And luckily, people like us are here to kind of explain that a little bit to people, which I think is really helpful. But yeah, just the wealth of stuff that you've got to wade through to actually get to the real stuff that you need.
I totally agree. And somebody put on a nice infographic that you would sometimes see floating around on Necromunda Worldwide. It was like, you know, start here, and you know, after you've, you know, kind of got your first gang, and then you go to here, and it was like XYZ and kind of filter down. I thought that was really nice. But you're right, things are so spread out for the game. It would be very nice to have like a consolidation of a lot of the rules and the factions and a lot of things. But you know, I'm almost it's almost like I don't want to ask for it, just because like I like the game as it is, and I'm almost fearful that, you know, things may get changed, you know, in a way that
exactly.
I may not like.
And you know, like it's easy to complain and go, oh, it's too much, but I'd rather they cared and actually did release so much content than they just kind of forgot about it, you know, like they have with a bunch of other games. Because that's the real problem, because that does tend to happen, you know, the people, they lose interest and then they just kind of drop off a little bit, which seems to happen to things like Warcry and a few other games that I've seen.
And you've even seen it with Necromunda. I mean, prior to the 2017, is that when Dark Uprising came out?
That's when Underhive came out.
Or Underhive, so there wasn't a whole lot of support for the game prior to then, I don't think, though, right? I mean,
not really, no. There's a huge gap. Obviously N95 was when the first one came out, and all they had, to be honest, back then, that was a hugely successful game, and all they had back then was one supplement, which was Outlanders. After that, it just dropped off pretty quickly, because they wanted to focus on 40k and fantasy back then.
Right.
Yeah. So what's next for you in the channel then?
So I have some Van Sar coming in. I know a lot of people are going to be very pumped about that. So Van Sar are on the way. I have not made any kind of announcement about that at all. So really excited to get them introduced on the channel. I also have the squats coming in as well. After watching y'all's battle report, I couldn't resist. They just look brutal.
Yeah, they really are, actually. It's an interesting one. I've played a few games with them now, and they're not OP, but they are very, very powerful in the right hands. But it's an interesting one. They definitely fill a hole, actually. Kind of a cross between Van Sar and Orlox in the amount of Daka and shooting ability and stuff. So they're an interesting one. Personally, I don't have as much appeal to play them, because I just feel like they might be a bit one-dimensional for me. But I can totally understand why people like them, though. But they're just not on the top of my list of games to play at the moment, I think.
Gotcha. Well, I've got them coming in. We're also going to get a little more into Kill Team. Kill Team, I've really enjoyed Kill Team, and we don't play it the best strategically.
Have you got the new box?
No. So Into the Dark, I figured that I could probably just buy the gangs, maybe the rule book or something, or I say gangs, the kill teams, maybe the rule book or something like that. I've got the Dark Uprising terrain, and I've got Necromunda terrain and spades. So I should be able to form some kind of, Space Hulk kind of platform. But most of our campaigns tend to follow a narrative. So in this narrative, obviously the outcome of the narrative depends on who wins the games and things like that.
Yeah.
So kind of the Xenos factions are kind of on the back foot right now. So the Necrons are kind of one of those Xenos factions on this planet. And kind of the Imperial Guard and the Astartes and all of them are going to kind of start to descend into these underground labyrinths, if you will. And that is going to be my setting for Into the Dark, if you will.
Yeah, so very cool. Very cool.
It won't take place on the Space Hulk, but it will be very similar of a feel.
Yeah, so it's kind of a bit of a crossover with Necromunda there a little bit as well.
Right.
It's definitely something that I'm interested in. Kill Team. I mean, if when I'm over in Australia, if that's the jam and that's what people are playing, then I'll definitely try and get into it. I think it's certainly appealing because it's that halfway house between having a full army of 40k and playing 40k, which, to be honest, seems so overblown. Like, for what even though I don't play 40k, I still watch a few battle reports and stuff, and it just seems really bloated and really kind of like it's coming to its end now, it feels. Even though you still have tournaments and stuff, like, it seems, I don't know, it just seems a bit much, really. So I think Kill Team's a nice balance, isn't it? So you can have a small sort of skirmish game within the same universe and using the same stuff.
Yeah, 40k it's difficult, and we try to squeeze in a 40k game here and there because I've got miniatures, and sometimes I just get the urge to want to play 40k, because I like the narrative aspect of it. I like the setting. I love the miniatures, of course. But you're right. We find ourselves digging through a lot of rules, and when you're doing things on camera, you want to be sure that you get things right. And we dig through these rules and we look everything up and we make the dice rolls and everything else. And then I go back and I'm watching the footage, and I always watch the full video and I edit and I try to catch any errors that we made, and we still have errors.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is the thing. Like, you get people commenting on battle reports all the time, like, oh, you did this wrong, and it's like, well, of course I did, because I'm not looking at rule books. I'm doing this all out of my head pretty much, and you kind of have to when you're doing battle reports, because it's like you can't just keep going through books, and it would just take forever otherwise.
Right. Right. So what about you? What is going to be coming down the pipe for your channel?
I'm getting really addicted to it, to be fair. Like, I'm obviously pumping out too many videos in a very short amount of space of time. I don't know why. I think at the moment I've been sort of laid off work for the last couple of weeks, so I've just got too much time on my hands. And like I said, my partner's living in Australia already, so I've got a lot of space to myself, so I can just do my man things without having to worry about where I am in the house or whatever. And I think the next thing, I don't know, like I was talking to you about it, I think I'd be keen to branch into different systems eventually, but I think Necromunda obviously will always be my main passion. But if I want to sort of grow and do a little bit better with the whole YouTube thing, then I'm going to need to look into other systems. Like I said, Blood Bowl was kind of like my main game, and it has been for most of my life. But it's something that I'm not as passionate about anymore. I got really into the tournament scene and was playing quite a lot, and it's a brutal mistress, Blood Bowl. Like, have you played much of it at all?
No, so the only Blood Bowl that I've played has been on the PC version, so never the physical game.
Oh yeah, the tournament play can be pretty fun, but also merciless when you have bad luck. That's for sure. Whereas something like Necromunda is completely different. It's not as unforgiving, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. So I actually looked into Blood Bowl, but my backlog was just too massive to really give it solid consideration.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a lot of fun because, again, I love sports, and that kind of just ties right into it, and having the whole teams that play a season, if you will, and getting to see the stats and things like that. I'm a numbers guy, so I could really get into that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's quite an accessible one for kids as well, actually, because I mean, if our sons, by the sounds of it, have got pretty good sort of analytical brains. My son's quite good at chess. I'm starting to get him played chess now, and there are a lot of similarities between chess and Blood Bowl, to be honest. But then there are with Necromunda too. The whole the whole turn, the way that turns work and stuff in Necromunda is very chess-like to me sometimes.
Right.
And I've always been very into chess as well since I was a kid. In fact, that's probably the one thing that got me into sort of board games originally, I suppose, was my dad teaching me how to play chess from a very young age. That's probably what got me hooked, I suppose.
Excellent.
Anyway, I reckon we should probably wrap this up at some point. But do you have any extra things you want to say at all?
No, I'm just curious from you how Friday afternoon feels.
Yeah. So I tell you what, it feels really weird. Wellington is the windiest city, I think, in the southern hemisphere, and the weather yesterday on Thursday was hailing massive ice balls, and it was freezing. And then today it's sunny and warm, and it's just bizarre.
Nice.
But yeah, it's Friday afternoon here. What time is it there?
Thursday night.
Bloody hell, yeah, it's so weird, isn't it?
So I still have a day of work ahead of me.
Oh wow, okay.
And then we'll try to set up a table maybe this weekend, maybe get some painting done. Who knows? I got a lot going on. So.
Oh, good stuff. Well, yeah, thanks for getting in touch, and we should definitely do this again at some point. But I was saying earlier, I think there's definitely scope for us as content creators to collaborate a little bit more in the future, and perhaps do some really exciting things. So,
absolutely. However, I can help grow the community, more than happy to help. So,
awesome.